You're listening to KOUG Radio. Listen live online at KOUGradio.org.
Good morning and welcome. This is Glad Heart Radio. I am your host, Lily Grace, and I'm here today in the studio with friend Kylie Sickles, and she's going to join us today. Today is a great day to say Happy Monday. And so, to all you lovely people out there, Happy Monday. I'd love to give you a case of the Happy Mondays from now on. Every week at 11 a.m., we're going to have a show here that is going to be discussing all about modern mysticism. And what does that mean? Well, today I'm going to start off by talking to you about the language of signs. If you have ever wondered, been curious about what a sign means in your life, that's what we're going to talk about today. And Kylie's going to help me through it. Kylie, I think we'll start off real quick. Have you ever had a propitious sign come into your life that helped you change your mind or the course of direction that really mattered to you?
That's a pretty good question. To me, it's like the way I see signs is kind of like opportunities that are kind of dropped. And I've been pretty fortunate with opportunities kind of dropping into my lap. Things like I was working at the front desk and I overheard people talking about KOUG Radio, and I was like, I could work there. So for things like that, yeah, those things come to mind.
Right. That's perfect. Yes. That's a golden nugget. I appreciate it. Yeah. So it's true. I think sometimes if you're like me, in the early days, we might think of a sign as a big voice coming from the sky that really needs to like land on our lap. And I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way. It can be a very gentle, and it's actually often a very gentle little nudge in a direction, that a little spark that says, oh, you know what? I like that. I kind of like that idea. So that's what I want to talk about that a little bit too. So we're going to talk about maybe some common mistakes, or I don't want to call them mistakes, but common sign reading faux pas that we might lean into sometimes. And I call it fault finding, actually. And like I said, a little bit about the language of signs, and why we call it a language is because if you're thinking about a language, you need a decoder. You need a way to interpret it. You know, we all grew up learning a language and it comes naturally to us. But if you walk out into the world and you look around and you don't actually have that Rosetta Stone, for example, to interpret the language, you might feel a little bit lost, might feel a little bit confused, or you're just going off of everything that is maybe already in your head. And I'm not trying to say that your head is a mess, but if it is a mess, then what you're interpreting could be a little bit skewed. If you're seeing it through a filter of, all the kinds of filters that we have in the world, then what you're interpreting might not actually be what's best for you. And the language of signs is really always about what's best for you. If anything on this journey, on your journey, and I'll call it your sacred journey, it's always sacred every step of the way, that the universe is always doing something to help you unfold, something always to help you grow. And because that's what we're here to do. Like a seed in the ground, it's just there to grow. So on that, I'll discuss a little bit about myself and my history with this path, and a little bit more about me. My name is Lily, and I've been a tarot reader now for, several years, since before COVID. And I was doing it professionally for a little while, and then COVID did, drop the ball on that, which is fine. It was totally fine. So I turned into a little bit of a hermit. And for anyone who has a deck out there, they know the hermit card, and you know what it means to be a little bit of a hermit. But there's lots of, I won't go too much into the hermit world, but there's lots of more than just being in a cave. So let's not go too far into the hermit mode. So on that too, when I really started exploring the language of signs, I think we do this as youngsters, and we just don't maybe, and we might actually get untrained out of it as we grow up, because our literal world is not seeing the language of signs as something profitable until now. I think if we look around and we look at influencers and we look at actually the increase in oracle card decks, if you have one already, an increase in something called the awareness of the Akashic records, numerology, astrology. It's all tied together, right? We're all in this big cosmic soup. And, if we're trying to wonder who's putting the ingredients in the soup, or are we an ingredient? It's kind of both. So, we are what we make of it. Um, so this beautiful woman, I'll talk about her book. Her name is Denise Linn, and she wrote the book called The Secret Language of Signs. And I actually had the great privilege of seeing her in person at an event here in, what's that place up the river called? Stevenson? Carson Hot Springs. There you go. I go up there all the time, and I like to draw blanks on the names because then I'm engaging with my memory. So I'm just trying to pull out my memory cards, which I appreciate anybody who tries to do that. Try to engage your memory in this world. It's a good thing. So, so she goes there. She actually goes to do seminars there more than once. She knows this area. She used to live close by, and she's a lovely woman who is a part of the Cherokee Nation. And I found her. I actually can't remember how I discovered her, but she was kind of like an angel for me in the way that when I found her books and I saw her, that something reached out to me and spoke to me. And I was like, and I just needed that in my life. There's a woman there that I could follow and tune into, and she has a message for me. And sure enough, seeing her live at a seminar, when I found out she was coming to town, and I had already done a book of hers that's called Soul Coaching. And she has a 28-day challenge, so to speak. It's not necessarily a challenge, but a 28-day recipe for writing down a not a goal list, but what do they call a set? It's well, I'll say it again. It's like a recipe. So you almost put your life on a pie chart in a way, and you see how you measure your time. And it's a good way to actually just to visually reflect on yourself. So you kind of make, an image of yourself on a piece of paper in a way where you quite literally look. It's like, well, how am I spending my time? There's only 24 hours in a day, or in a month, in a year, and and of course the book is I'm not doing it justice right now. It's much more than that. But every day on this 28-day journey, it can really help you ignite something, help you get to know yourself, help you kind of touch base with some of those special gifts that are within you already. They're already in there. They really are. They really are. It's just that, and that's what the secret language of signs is about too. It's about helping bring out those little nuggets, those little gems that are already within you. So, so Denise Linn, so I got to meet her at Carson Hot Springs, and it would be a little bit to say that this event helped change the course of my life in a big way. But I would also say that it's a cumulative thing. When we're on our path, sometimes we want to lay down, oh, everything is kind of leaning on this moment. Everything is if it falls into this moment, it's going to really change things and open things up for me. And in a way that's true when we learn to follow these signs that come to us, or these moments of insight, of instinct, and we kind of nudge on them and we kind of move towards them. Yes, that's where things can start to move in a way that shifts. You might start to feel that shift. But I also want to just encourage anyone, if you feel like you've missed those opportunities, that doesn't mean they're gone. They're always there for you to kind of follow through with. So I would say there was a cumulative thing that was happening in my life that led me to this event. And after this event, And what happened there was an awakening, and it was an encouragement to say, yes, keep going, find find this, uh, find this for yourself. And and I would turn to Kylie. I would say, I would say, Kylie, uh, was there a moment again in your life where you thought, yes, I'm going to dye my hair pink and it's going to be awesome and it's going to suit me so well? No, but on that too, though, to have the courage to do that. And if there was a moment where you feel like um, another nudge, another nugget of yours, like the KOUG radio that kind of set you up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll actually jump on the pink hair example. It was I was watching a YouTube video, and this YouTuber I really liked, she had pink hair, and like I just thought, oh, maybe a better example actually is the reason I'm at WSU Vancouver. Um, I was watching. I grew up with video games, right? My dad played a lot of video games, and my brother did. So did I. And I was watching this YouTube playthrough of this game that I had grown up with, um, Bioshock Infinite. And during the credits, it had like a bunch of quotes from people like who worked on the game. And seeing those, they weren't even like necessarily good things. They were like, thanks for supporting me through the late nights and stuff. And like, but I just like something ticked in my brain that was like, oh, I can do like something that's creative like that. Like that is something I could do. So I initially came to WSU Vancouver because there's a video game certificate program. And that's no longer the path that I'm taking, but it set me on the path that I currently am. Just like that one moment of seeing this thing that didn't even directly relate to the thought that it caused, but like it's the reason that I'm here. So,
Yes, right. The trickle effect. That's true. I love that. And that is one of those that's one of those common things that I'd like to get back to, is where you said you didn't even know what occurred, like the thought that occurred before. Sometimes tracing those thoughts help us like see a pattern. However, sometimes it's not super important to like dissect that so much that you forget, that you don't realize what's important is that you moved forward, that you had this propitious moment where this moment where you got to move forward like that. And so that's kind of what I would say for me too. So like I just knew that I needed to be there. And so whatever it took for me to be there, I really tried to make it happen. And in that circumstance, sometimes I feel like I got to know a lot. And I think we all do. We might face a lot of no's, and they're really discouraging. And in this time in my life, I was just like, you get to the point too where you're almost so worried about asking that you might get another no. But it turns out that I got a yes. And that was that, I mean, that was what I needed. And it's true. We do like to have that sense of permission from outside ourselves. And that could be another one of those things about the language of signs, is that it gives us a green light, says, please go, like, give this a little try. It feels like we're being supported by something more than just ourselves. And which is absolutely the case, because we are always connected and interacting with our environment. And that's why we call it a language, the language of signs. And if we go back in history a little bit, and why Denise Lynn wrote this book, she has Cherokee. She's part of the Cherokee Nation, and so she grew up with a culture that was about living with nature in a way that it was always about interpreting what's going on outside in the elements, in the ground, in the earth, and it wasn't just about um, seeing the language and knowing it literally. Like, I think sometimes we're caught up in this idea that we want to learn something so we know it and we feel knowledgeable. But if you think just basically and intrinsically, it's it I don't want to say it's just survival, but it's just how it's a way of living. It's just a way of being because the interconnection there is already there. It's already set in place. So like a cord that connects you to the ground, you are feeling the rhythms of that environment. And as a rhythmic being made of energy, made of a pulsating, a beat that they go together. So there's a lot of personal things that happened at that conference, but I was wondering how to explain what was the most impactful for me, um, in a way that people could hear it. Um, and so I would say that what was so grounding is the connection that we all have to those that have gone before us. And those we call them our ancestors. And I think it's important to just include that those that have gone before us have paved the way for us here and now. And that is, and that their work, their effort is what helped us, create what we have. And so by honoring them and getting to know them, that is what moved me in that moment where I felt a greater sense of connection to something beyond myself that helped me get here. And on that, I'm going to move on to more about signs versus symbols and the ancient wisdom around symbols and intuitive understanding versus literal understanding. So I think we talked just a little bit already. And I would wonder if you guys have thought about signs versus symbols. And I'm going to turn to Kylie again. Kylie, do you have an idea about what's the difference between a sign versus a symbol?
Uh, I'll take my best shot at it. Because I definitely don't know for sure. Um, but I would guess that a sign is like a bigger thing, like kind of what we were talking about, like something that could change your path. And a symbol could be like a smaller like signifier of like a thumbs up from the world. Like, good job. But that's a total guess.
No, that's pretty good. It's funny. We have a class here on campus, right? The language, text, and technology. And I think we actually go into a little bit about signs and symbols. And um, I think it's interesting because a sign might be something more intuitive that we see it out there and it registers within us in a way that the literal meaning doesn't come to the forefront of our mind. And so when we see a sign, or I'm sorry, a symbol that is like, I'm thinking of a road sign now. So, so we put a symbol on a road sign and we know, oh, it means turn left. It means turn right. And so what happens in our modern day world, I think what's happening a lot is, you can look around and Miss Lynn talks about this too, that a sign can come in the form of a license plate, like a number on a license plate that maybe you saw, and then you get a receipt at your checkout and you see the same series of numbers there. And then you go home and you turn on the TV or you look at the clock and there's the same set of numbers and you're like, huh, what is that? And that is also what we call the recurrence effect, that you've seen something more than once, that you've seen it 3 times. So, sometimes when you're starting out on this journey, if you see something once, you see like a group of deer by the side of the road, and maybe you live in a place where there are lots of deer. You're like, "I see a deer." Totally, it's a deer, you know? Um, but but in a place where, who knows, that you don't see them that often, or a certain time of year that this doesn't happen very, very, very often, and you might actually see that thing happen, or you see a deer, and then you're like, "Oh, that's lovely," and you just have a moment with it. and then you go for a drive later that day, and then you see like deer everywhere. You see somebody walking down the street with a and you see like a deer sticker on the back of a car, like when you're at the red light. And these are things that kind of happen where you're not looking for them, that you're not actively looking for them, but they kind of come in this sort of very subtle or way that's, I don't want to say shifty, but when you might look up and take a pause if you're having a thought that is coming to you or a question that's coming to you that you really need answered, and in that moment you see something there, that could be a way, a signal that is saying, oh, you can look into that, and it might give you a little advice. So so that's a little bit on the signs and symbols, and the language of three, or the occurrence of three. So it can help you as a beginner, where if you're looking for the importance of something and you might not feel like, oh, this matters too much. Well, you can ask yourselves, like, did it happen 3 times? Or was it was once enough in a way that it was it stood out like a lot, a lot. Because if you're like me, and I suppose you're like anybody who like, I'll say maybe like the TikTok version of reading signs, where I don't know how people I don't do TikTok. I'm not encouraging it at all. I would say please put down the TikTok. And I was thinking about that too. This isn't necessarily a sign, but a connection. The TikTok, where the way that they named it that, and it's just tick-tocking your life away. Not your life away. It's tick-tocking the clock. But don't let it tick-tock your day away before you get to something. Um, no, no. I know there's lots of valuable information on there. Don't get me wrong. I get it. I get it. It's awesome. And that actually that happens to me too sometimes. Where if I open up my phone, and I know we all open up our phones a lot, but um and we were that's something that's happening in the digital world now, is that we might open up our phone and we see something on our phones and we're like, "Oh, I was just thinking about that," or "I was doing this." And sometimes there might be some crosshairs there, because we all are aware, or we might be becoming more aware now, that what comes shows up on our phones is actually geared towards us. And uh and we might so if we were looking up something uh about uh about something, and then it shows up on our phone later, and we're like, oh, wait a minute, is that a sign that I should go and see that concert on Saturday night? It was like, well, were you just looking up concert tickets? Because they're just trying to get you there. So but still, so nudges of encouragement, or maybe false advertising, you got to look out for those too, because that happens. So, and that's what I, and that's about how to follow signs and determine them for yourself. Um, and I realize this is kind of a big subject, and I didn't want to get too wordy, but this is a podcast, so you're getting all the words right now. And at the end, or towards the end here, I would love to do a simple reading for everybody today. So each week, I'm going to take a pause right here to tell you, each week we'd like to discuss different topics. And this is just an opener, a refresher on kind of what signs are. And so each week, it'll be a little bit more, we can be a little bit more relaxed about where we're headed with the conversation and which subjects come up. Um, in a relative way for the week. And I'd like to set you off on your week in a way that gives you some little clues that will help you um, just kind of link in and remember how you started your week, and kind of see it through in a more light-hearted way, in a more um, softer way that can just kind of, help you land softly each time, like you're on a cloud. And so, on that, how to follow signs and determine them. Ah, this is a this is a good one. This is about carving your own path, or reprogramming yourself, I like to call it. And it's easy to say reprogram now because, we are in the computer world and we are all pretty much aware of software programs and how we use them to program. Um, and so I think it's becoming more popular and understandable to reference this. So, like as a child, as a youngling, we are programmed way, by our environment, by our culture, by certain, tendencies and habits. And for the most part, it's always who, however we grow up, it's for the best. It's well meaning. Uh, we are always doing the best we can with what we have. And so the reprogramming and carving your own path happens with a little touch more of introspection because we're all seeking a really happy life. We're all seeking the best version of ourselves, whether we know it or not. And or we're seeking to allow that to kind of come out and to happen. Um so with following signs and what I was saying at the beginning of the session here is about using that Rosetta Stone and using that maybe decoder versus not. And there's two ways to think about this. So in tarot, when we first start learning tarot cards, my lovely teacher, who's a local teacher actually, and she still teaches, and she's fabulous. Um, I'll drop her contact information here soon because I think she's still making circles, and her name's Sally. And the first thing that she would tell us is just throw away the book. Just take the little book that your deck comes with, and maybe even if you have an oracle card deck, she's like, just put it to the side. You don't need it. And because in those guides, that it's kind of what do you say? Well, maybe a cookie cutter way of describing what's on the card. However, when you grow a part of it, when you try to create a relationship with it, then that's the evolving. That's the ever evolving relationship you're growing with the language of those cards. Um and so that and so that's kind of also with the language of signs. It's like on one day, you see something or you read something, um, and it means something to you then based on what you've grown up with. If um, goodness gracious, what's coming out? I know I'm a huge fan of Disney movies, and I get to watch them a lot with my kids, and so I love the magic of the sparkly effects and all the animation. I mean, I grew up. I think Cinderella was my favorite, and um, And so there are these things that, so I think of Cinderella and we think about maybe the color blue and that sparkly blue color. Um, and it has a harmonious effect for us. And there's a real chemistry to that. And there's a real, interesting, feeling that happens when we might look at this beautiful color blue. But also for me, as a little girl who loved this movie, I'll see the sparkly blue and it might spark this feeling in me and this idea in me like, oh, everything is actually quite possible. And there's a fairy godmother out there who's looking after me. And it could be in this moment where if I see something about that that reminds me of that, it's just a little bit of that uplifting nature. And truly, so this is about carving your own path and how to reprogram yourself. If you're using the language of signs, it's a way, you're setting markers for yourself. You're setting markers for yourself along the way. When you start to interpret them and see them over and over again, you can get to know them on your own and what they mean for you, and also with the help of really gifted people who wrote these books and made these cards. And they also have, I would say more. there's the cultural meaning, but I want to say more ancient wisdom in there. The tarot, they were created not like in ancient times, but over half a century ago. And but there is something in them that is kind of pretty universal when we think about what they represent, what they represent, just like the Cinderella fairy tale, what it represents to somebody, who that heard maybe the Grimm's fairy tale version of it and didn't see the Disney version of it might have a different feeling. But you see, so that's a little bit of the literal difference and the cross-cultural difference and what it means for you. So ultimately, how you're creating this relationship within you and with those things that you see, obviously you want to make it for your benefit. And that's what, when these things happen, to kind of avoid, or not avoid, I want to say, don't lean into fault finding. Um, and that I kind of brushed on in a little bit to begin with, but so I'm going to put a pin in that. I'm going to put a pin on that. I want to stay with Cinderella and I want to stay with the fluff sparkles for a minute. So that's what it means to kind of uncover what those hidden little gems mean for you. Okay. So and I'll turn and say, let's see, because I would love to know if Kylie had a wonderful moment of Disney or even just a sparkly moment of any sort of animation that uplifted her, that stays with her now.
Gosh. The one that like immediately comes to mind, when I was a little kid, I don't remember. I know I watched a lot of Disney movies, but I don't remember a lot of them. I kind of rewatched them as I became an adult and was like, "Oh, I don't remember a lot of this." But I remember when I was a little kid, I had this little like Sleeping Beauty Aurora like bright pink dress, and I wore that constantly every day. I cried when I lost it, and like I found it a month later in a closet, and I wore it every day again. Yeah, and it was just like
Like your pink hair. No,
yeah,
I'm creating an association. Hold
yeah,
on.
no, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was gonna bring up. It was like after that, and after I had this kind of middle phase where I was like, ugh, pink, ugh. And then like, I don't know, coming back and realizing it feels a little silly to put so much emphasis on this color and stuff, but I'm like, I remember how I was as a kid when I was like begging my parents for a pink room or wearing the sparkly pink dress every day. And then I had that period where I hated that color. And now I've come back. It kind of feels like I'm reconnecting with that like childhood wonder. Um, so that sparkly pink dress,
Yes.
meant a lot to me.
Yes. I love that. And that's really perfect. That's exactly what this does too. I think you said that so nicely because it's true. You're reconnecting with that child, that innocent child nature, where I think the most of us, or not most of us, where like you said, you kind of went through a phase where you're like, oh, that's silly. Why do I like that color so much? And maybe I'm not gonna put this project onto you. I'm gonna try not to. But we could have, if it didn't come to us, we're like, oh, we might put that little bit of a dream aside. It's like, oh, that wasn't that important, or it didn't really mean that much, or people, like people around me told me it didn't mean that much. And so, as a little child, we have to believe that because we have to go with uh the people that are taking care of us. We have to go with the flow of our grown-ups. And so, but in a good way, you came back to it and you found it again. And I would say that's the charm that is never elusive to us, is that we can always kind of tap back into the childhood innocence in a way that we're always learning all the time. And when we as we grow older, we have the wisdom of our experience, and um, and this is also with with the language of signs, what I want to say is that uh, we the, those elders back in the day that were interpreting maybe the winds and the feathers that fell from the trees. I'm not trying to put shame to any of this, or not. I'm trying not to down this at all, because I still do this. Actually, I'll step out into the wind and I'll feel it on my face, and and it'll just actually it could just be called a wind bath, where it helps refresh you. And in that refreshing moment, you feel a sense of clarity. And then the next thing that you need to do helps you. Or, it's like, oh, I know what to do now. And so that's that little bit. And then actually in that moment, if you're in the wind and a little creature does come to you, um, then that little creature might have something to say as well. And it's not, we're not talking that it starts speaking English like in the movies. It's not a chipmunk that's saying, "Hey, Drizella," or I don't know. What's the new one, Enchanted, where she's talking to the chipmunk friend. And he's got kind of like, I don't know, an Eastern accent, and he's just kind of, pretty tough little chipmunk. But so I think once upon a time I used to dream that. I used to dream that the animals would talk that way. Maybe if don't we all? I don't know. I kind of wish I could go out into the forest and they would start talking to me. And that's the thing, is that when you kind of drop that notion that is what, like, if that's what magic is, that's what the magic of a sign is, like the big booming guy. It is more about, again, that relationship that you're evolving with over time. So it's not about one and done, or I've got this message and that's it and it's over. It's actually an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing relationship that you create and cultivate. Um so reconnecting with that innocence, that childhood innocence, that's lovely. And I hope we all remember that too, because that is what it's like to embrace vulnerability and actually allowing ourselves to see things with a fresh eye and with something different. And I think when I'm looking at the clock here and I'm looking at my friend window, it might be time to give you guys a little bit of a sparkle, a glimmer from these wonderful books that I have. And each week I'd like to I have many Oracle decks and Tarot decks, but for the start, I'm going to open up these books that will give you an animal, a crystal, and a divine feminine representation. And also, before I do any reading, I usually say, just take what helps you and leave the rest. However, if anything that you feel, or like you're just like, oh, that's just not for me, maybe don't say it's not for you or not for you. Just kind of like let it sit with you for a minute, see how it feels. Try it on like a pair of shoes. If they don't fit, all right, you can still look at the shoes and say, that's pretty. Those are cool shoes. They just don't fit me too well. Okay. So on that, oh yes, human basic. Well, I think we went over a lot about that. So I hope that this conversation was a little bit didn't feel too much like instructions, but felt a little bit more, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can take that. Oh, I love this one. So right now I'm just opening up a crystal book. And even though I right now, I'll say I'm no expert too. I'm no expert. I'm in an ongoing relationship with developing my love for crystals, which actually started kind of speaking to me more. I've been more interested in them and feeling them out. And this one, I might butcher the name, is called pyrolusite. Pyrolusite. Have you started? Kylie, do you know crystals?
Yeah,
You talk to
I
crystals?
don't, but it sounded good. So I'm here to support you.
So, and you can't see it, so I'll describe it to you. The color is silver black dark and blue dark gray. It's kind of shiny. I grew up in Georgia, so mica there. If you guys have ever seen a piece of mica, it looks like very dark and black but it's very flaky and it can almost like break in half in your hands. And so we used to play with it. So we'd have these sheets of mica, and you could it looks dark and gray, but it's also shiny. So when you peel it off and you look through it, it's like a little window pane, a little lens. You could break it in half. So um and I was reading this one recently. So you'll have to this this is a new experience for me to I haven't actually done a crystal reading before for other people. I've just been doing them for myself. So this is kind of a new thing. And I'm looking at the page numbers and I'm looking at the things that I would normally connect. And I am just going to read a little tidbit from the book here. So, um, pyrrolysite is an extremely useful stone to place in your immediate environment or meditation space. It repels negative energy and dispels psychic interference from any source, strengthening the aura in the process. It can prevent undue mental influence from someone with a strong mind, dissolve emotional manipulation, and provide a barrier to the attentions of those who inhabit the lower astral worlds. Oh, wow, that sounds like a big chunk of something to chew on. It's like, oh, goodness. Now, why would this be happening to us here on KOUG Radio, or why would we be seeing this stone here? That's a little bit of my job. I'll try and interpret that for you a little bit. It also says this stone heals energetic disturbances and transmutes disease in the physical, emotional, and mental bodies. Well, if you know where we are, we're towards the end of the semester and we are feeling the crunch time of all the things that we're doing. And something that happens in those crunch moments as human beings is like if things aren't working out, we might start pointing the finger too. Like when that happens, it's like, oh, this guy didn't do this, or this person didn't do this, or I have this assignment. And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to finish it. It's all so bad. So if you think of pyrrolysite, it might be reminding you that, you are safe in doing your work and what's best for you. And it's not in blaming or transmute or like you're protected. I don't want to say anybody's attacking you actually ever. I try not to say that there's no psychic attacks going on, but this is in the book. Okay. This is this crystal wisdom that's a little deeper than what I would say. But sometimes it might actually, we're around so many people and so many influences. It might feel like that. So you're safe. Just remember that you're safe from anything like that. When those crunch times come on, just kind of let it fall to the side. Let it go to the side, and you just want to focus on what you can do in that moment with your work, because you have the ability to to get to the end, and because you've gotten this far with your mental capability, with your strengths. Okay, so pyrrolysite is kind of reminding you of that. It's going to help remove any blockages that you may have this week. So as you go throughout your week and you feel like if it's just you're not sure how things are going to get done, this is a reminder that mental clarity can happen for you. It's always there for you. So if you're feeling really crunched down with your work, it's okay to seek a moment, to seek a break, to take those frequent little breaks. Maybe you need more frequent breaks now because it's in a crunch period, because you're thinking, oh, I've just got to get this done. But a break doesn't have to be longer than 5 minutes. I learned a great lesson one about 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off when you're doing this work, because like if you can focus for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break, that can help you get into that. So that's pyrrolysite for you. Now I'm going to go to our next friend. I'm going to go to an animal friend, and animal friends I do love very much. I've had this book for a great long time. It's called Animal Spirit Guides. I recommend it to anyone, by Stephen D. Farmer. And actually, the thing that I just read to you before was the Crystal Bible. She's also wonderful. Judy Hall's like a leading expert in crystals, and she has lots of books. So that was the Crystal Bible that just came about pyrrolysite for you. And here, okay, so Animal Spirit Guides. And this might not seem like a random way. Normally, I would have somebody here, and we'd actually burn some sage and smudge each other, and I'd have them turn the card over themselves, or I would do it for them. And you might say, "Oh, there's no mystery in that. Just doing it from a podcast station." But the truth is, whenever I've done this for myself, it's always revealed something that was maybe I even had those thoughts. It's like, oh, what the heck, what is the point? And then I was always surprised I'm consistently surprised and feel lovely about it. Oh, and speaking of which, this is one of my favorites. So I'm here to tell you to remember this week in your journey is the lowly tiny ladybug. Oh, ladybug. Don't they just cheer you up?
Yeah.
Don't they just cheer you up? They're so red and they have little speckles. And I tell you, whenever I see a ladybug, like when one comes to me in like the dead of winter too, when I see one, that's just a little bit of a magic sparkle right there because, yeah, the ladybugs, they're so sweet. And it's springtime.
Mhm.
So that is like springtime and the garden and all all the loveliness of the ladybug. So without giving my interpretation of it so much, I'll read from the book here again to share a little light about it. And the ladybug says, "If it alights you, I do love this part. If it alights you, make a wish, and your wish will be granted. Structure a time each day where you can pray or meditate in silence and solitude. Something you thought was lost will be making its way back into your life." And this is not supposed to be a religious show, but there's a little bit of religion in or there's religious figures that will show up, obviously, because we're a part of this world where religious figures exist. And so how you see them or how you relate to them is also something that you can interpret for yourself. But Mother Mary is with you to guide you and console you, no matter what your religious or spiritual orientation. Right there. You're shielded and protected from irritations, pestering thoughts, or annoying behaviors from others. And right there, so that's also, it's interesting to connect this with the pyrrolysite, and that's how they kind of go together. That the pestering thoughts, the irritations, or annoying behaviors from others, you're protected from that. Don't let that get to you. So if that's been bothering you, I just remember throughout your week, you kind of don't lean into that. Ladybugs are just light as a feather, but they're also really resilient, and they come in the spring and they help our gardens. They help things grow. So if you think of the ladybug as your ally and helping you grow this week, that's a wonderful way to look at it. They're there to maybe eat those little aphids, those pestering thoughts that kind of nibble at you, and they're there to just kind of help you grow. So if you think of a ladybug shining a light, like, a light shining down on you, even though the sun's not out, for Pete's sake, not out yet. Um, then, but it still is. It's still always there. So I hope you feel that glow, and I hope you feel that light shining on you, and that you feel safe with that, and that it does alight you. And if it does alight you, if you feel like making a wish, it could be something really tiny, um, or it can be something, even bigger, and let that spark something in you. And last but not least, I'll read a little bit about the goddess Amaterasu, the goddess of light. So here we are with more light. That's wonderful. I love that. And I do love this goddess. I learned more about her this year. I did a project on her. And the quote here from this Oracle guidebook that I'll say is called the Divine Feminine Oracle Guidebook, and by Megan Watterson. Also love her. I'm sure we'll talk more about her sometime. We are all sacred mirrors reflecting back the same light. So I love that.
Mhm.
So again, well, let's let that sink in for a minute. We are all sacred mirrors reflecting back the same light. She is a Japanese goddess, and her name means shining in heaven. The legend of her dates back to the 8th century, and I know a little bit of the story. So basically, what happened to Amaterasu is that her brother, played a mean trick on her, and she became so irritated. She became so upset that this is in alignment with what I was saying earlier too, with the end of the week, or with the end of the semester, that she got so frustrated and angry, she just went into a cave and she hid there. And Amaterasu, she's considered the light bringer. And in Japanese culture, she's kind of like the sun goddess. So she brings out the sun. And so when she hid herself in a cave, the sun was gone, and it was awful for everybody. And so what happened was, so again, more about the story, but see, so with with all the pesteringness that might be happening and occurring with you, this is just another reminder that the light really is within you, and it can be around you, and it can help you. If you think about it, even in whatever you're experiencing right now, it can kind of help you come out of your shell a little bit, or come out of this cave. And that's in the story. That's what she did, is that she got so upset. She went and she hid herself in this cave, and she just cried, and she had her moment. However, what happened to Amaterasu is that she kind of stayed too long in the cave, and she kind of stayed so long that everybody started missing the sunlight, and they started to miss her. But they just had no way of pulling her out. So what happened in the story is that these little spirits, these little mischievous spirits, I'll call them, they tried to trick her out of the cave. And what they did is they played outside of the cave walls, and they started, dancing and laughing, telling stories. And finally, Amaterasu heard the giggles and the laughter, and she decided to come out and see. She got a little bit curious. She just got a little bit curious, and that helped her crawl out of her cave. So, without going into all the depths of the details of the story, the curiosity, the little spark of curiosity that she felt, helped her kind of come back out of the cave. And so, if you felt that way recently, if you felt like you've kind of been hunkering down, this is definitely that moment where, because we are approaching the end. So that is a little bit of the moment to remind ourselves to come out of the cave and see.
No, sorry. Right outside of our studio is a vending machine. And every time I see a student pass by, my eyes just pick it up. So if I look over there a lot, that's why.
That's okay. I was just thinking,
Yeah, you're all
the
good.
next person is coming to knock on the door, and we got to break away. But that's not the case, and that's okay. People are hungry. People got to eat. So and that's the other, if that's what you're curious about, if that's what gets you out of your cave, going to have like a little bit of food with a friend, if you're just feeling so hunkered down, anything that helps you get through this week and helps you get through the end of the semester, that is what I wish for you. That's what I wish for you, is that you have a really lovely, joyful week, that rain or shine, that you feel the sunshine in your life and around you, and that you know that you're safe and protected from all those pestering thoughts, and that you're going to rock it. You're going to rock it. It's okay to feel what you're feeling and still rock it. Honestly, it's okay to feel that. So without further ado, I would say, Kylie, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And going through the first show with us. And I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're here. And I hope this meant something for you or helped you a little bit. And ladies and gentlemen, and guys and girls, and all the beautiful people that are listening and that might come back, that we want you to come back next Monday, I'll have more for you. We'll dive into more on the animal spirit world. I'd love to tap into that. I'd love to tap into the realm of wolves and what it means to seek solitude for your own health, and the difference between loneliness. So the difference between loneliness and solitude, and seeking it out for those moments of peace and letting peace prevail in your life. But on that, I am so glad that you're here with us. Thank you for checking in with Glad Heart Radio today. Lots of light, lots of love, and let some magic into your life this week.